economist, stated that out of ignorance that we're giving up our liberties because of our spending, our excessive spending. What say you, Mr. Wallace?
Well, I think he's right on it. That, we're spending and spending and spending, and then you get yourself in a situation where sooner or later you got to pay, and then this creeping deal, with regulations and so forth, just slowly takes away your freedoms. And I don't think people pay it. Not that they're not paying attention, because the public seems to have really woken up to it now. But I would say you won't know that there's a regulation against this until you run into it. So you don't realize how government just creeps slowly going into all these different areas of your life, or of life in general. And if you're not a small businessman, you don't know all the hurdles a small businessman's got to jump through. If you're not a farmer, you don't know all the hurdles and things that they put on farmers. And so it generally the vast part of the public is going around living their life, which that's what you do. Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and you don't see what's happening until you run into it.
Exactly. Now, Milton Friedman, the great economist that he was, said that he was working on something shortly, of course, before his death, regarding a constitutional restraint against spending. Do you believe that was a wise idea? And if so, should we try a constitutional restraint against the Congress spending money today?
I think they need to live within their means. And one of the I always point to the entitlement thing is what is really, it seems to me, to be what's crushing the messing the system up. I guess is they're spending more money. They're spending more money than they're taking in. That's for the first time. That's now you're starting to see it, and how they keep that system up is a mystery to me. Without doing they need to do some major overhauls of it, and they need to stay within. They need to stay within what they're bringing with the money they've got coming in.
Exactly. We talk about $4.8 trillion of spending when you only bring in $2.9 trillion of revenue. And recently, the House passed Paul Ryan's budget for 2012, which did make some cuts to social programs. So I'm going to ask you, sir, are there any programs in Congress that Congress authorizes funding for that are just hands off that you wouldn't touch in Washington D.C.? And if there are some, would you let us know what those are?
I would say everything needs to be on the table, but what you can do, there was a group called Strong America Now that has been proposing doing it's called Lean Six Sigma, which I know sounds like a college fraternity, but it's a waste management plan that industry's been doing for a long time. I think the Toyota Motor Company started it, and they estimate that there's about $500 billion worth of waste in the budget, top to bottom now, that they think they could find by implementing that. And I would think that would be the first place to start, because even if that's not a right number, even if it's a lot less, it's still money that you could find where waste is going on. There's not some program that the Democrats are going to fight you to the death over, or Republicans are going to fight you over. It's stuff like, and I use this example all the time, there was a capacitor in one of the airplanes on the aircraft carriers, and I'm not an expert on any of that, but it was shutting the planes down, and they were having to keep it on a maintenance schedule, and it was, you'd have like 2/3 of them down at any given time. And when they found out it was some little capacitor in the motor, they went in there and fixed it and kept it on the schedule it was supposed to be on, and it saved $160 million in the defense budget. Well, $160 million here and $160 million there adds up to real money sooner or later. I think every person used to say that, and that would be a good place to start. And then going through these programs top to bottom and figure out, what could be cut, waste first, and then I guess maybe zero-based budgeting where you have to justify every dollar in every department. And I think really we need to look at the government across the board and figure out, what is it the government's doing that they have no business, the federal Bob Dole, who I admired a great deal, he used to carry the 10th Amendment, in his pocket all the time. And somehow or another, I don't know what's happened since 1996, but even Republicans sometimes have expanded the government into places that I don't think is not its role, and the education department is a perfect example of that. I think their goal when Jimmy Carter came up with that was to improve math and science scores. Well, if that's their mission statement, they have failed miserably. and I can't help but think that the school board in Horry County or in Darlington County or any of the counties down here, they know more about what the kids need in these counties, or the state of South Carolina does, than being dictated to by the federal government with a whole bunch of rules and regulations and all that they push down on them. That really, I think they ought to eliminate that. That's what department that could be eliminated or downsized greatly. And maybe the federal government could be something where if you could design a program and ask for grant money, that potentially would help you because we got poor counties here, and I can understand educating kids in a place like Marion where 19% is unemployment is there, so you've got a lot of poverty there. That school board might need help financially at putting something together. So maybe some block grants or some things without any strings attached to them other than equal access for everybody. But other than that, the federal government's got no real business, I don't think, dictating education to South Carolina for Washington or anywhere else in this country for that matter.
I admire I admire the fact that you recognize before you come to Washington, D.C., that there's no sacred cows. And you recognize rightly that both Republicans as well as Democrats have fought viciously to keep government growing at the expense of the common citizen. And question for you, why did you sign that pledge for cut, cap, and balance?
I signed it because I think it's important that we get this under control and then cap spending at a level that we can sustain and keep the budget balanced. Because at the end of the day, I use this one all the time too. Is that President Reagan came to Washington D.C. with 94 programs he wanted to eliminate, and he didn't get but 12 of them eliminated, but he cut the budgets of the rest of them. And one example, the Small Business Administration, he had that one from $2 billion down to $85 million when he left office. Well, in 4 years, it was already back up to $978 million, I believe. So it was already halfway back to what it had been. If we don't have something that says we're going to cut these budgets and get them under control, eliminate some programs and eliminate them, and then cap where they are, and then let's figure out a way to make sure we get the balanced budget amendment that says this has got to be done every year. All you do is you might solve the problem short term for a year, but every year they come back to fight and argue about it again the next year. So all it really does is like a vampire, it comes back from the dead every year. And you haven't really accomplished anything. Because 4 years down the road, you're back in the hole.
Back in the same situation. Listen, you're not going to be a big fan. Well, they're not going to be a big fan of you in terms of the U.S. Senate the way it is with the Democrats being in charge of it. I'm just going to make it a very plain question to you. In this election, are you willing to compromise principles in order to get along with those who are in power in Washington, D.C.?
I think you need to stand by your principles when you're dealing with people. I mean, there's compromise if you can find some ground, perhaps, but you don't want to just roll over and not stand by what you believe, because by not doing that, by not standing by principles, we've gotten ourselves in a $16 trillion mess, and your kids and grandkids and great are not going to see the end of just paying that debt off, much less what else we have to add as we keep going. And we're about at the fork in the road where there's not going to be a way to get it fixed if we don't really tackle it now. And I think it's vitally important. And I can't help, I hope, of course, I sometimes sit in amazement. I see that there are people on the other side that understand